We're going to a few minutes for everybody to trickle in. Really glad to see you all here today. Excited to share this material with you and uh, really hoping that you find something, a kernel that you can take with you. So, yeah, we'll just get started very shortly. If you have questions, please put them in the Q&A and not in the chat, and we'll get to them at the end. So, let's get started. My name is Anjali Maazel. I'm a former Princeton University interviewer, TED Talk speaker, and college admissions expert. I'm also the very proud mom of a thriving 24-year-old now in grad school. At Anja Education Consultants, we've helped hundreds of students get into their top perfect match schools, including Yale and Stanford, Johns Hopkins and Vanderbilt, Swarthmore, and UT Austin, to name just a few. Many of you are here today because you can clearly see that applying to college has become much more challenging, and many of you are probably feeling a mixture of excitement and anxiety. So let me first just begin by acknowledging that I truly understand these feelings. And by the end of this talk today, after I outline the specific challenges and solutions, I think you're going to feel not only much more clear and in control of the process, but confident and aligned with what you truly want. So I'd like to begin by telling you a story. I grew up in New York City and went to an extremely competitive high school. Just to give you an idea, I had 5 to 6 hours of homework a night and really felt oppressed by it. I did well despite this, but I couldn't wait to get out of there and go to college. My senior year was truly bizarre. My classmates and their parents got together and offered me cash to withdraw my applications after I was admitted early action to Yale. Apart from the unsettling feeling this gave me, I hadn't decided if I really wanted to attend that school. I wanted to see which other options would open up for me in the spring. And as it turned out, I ended up going not to Yale, but to Princeton instead. But this experience just left me feeling very ill at ease. So when I was planning my son's education, I was determined that he would not suffer this kind of crushing, toxic academic environment that I had endured, which I really didn't feel served me in the long run. So I wanted my son to be happy, first and foremost, but also successful. So how to strike the right balance? The difficulty there started with choosing a high school for him. So we went back and forth between competitive, well-known prep schools and a small unknown school that prioritized love of learning and independent projects. And I realized that either way, there would be trade-offs. But in the end, I chose the small school where my son found his passion. Now, given that I had been an interviewer for many years for Princeton, as well as a teacher who wrote letters of recommendations for students and gave college essay guidance, you'd think it would have been easy for me to guide my son through his college applications, right? Not true. So I hired a colleague to work with him. And after many months, at the end of a surprisingly difficult process, he got into an Ivy League school. But that was not what he chose. He made what some of you might think of was a very unexpected choice, and I'll tell you about it at the end of the webinar. So what I want you to know is I've been where you are. And although I knew the system well, when my son applied to college, I had complicated feelings. Like many parents, I was vulnerable to confusion, frustration, and fear. But I did learn something important. I discovered that my son, like all of you here today, was facing a threefold problem when applying to college. Number one, the increased competition. Number two, increased competitiveness and complexity of the application process. And number three, the rising cost of college. So, what does this challenge look like in practice? First, let's consider the competitiveness of college. If you were a Texas student in the 90s and graduated in the top 20% of your class, you were automatically admitted to the University of Texas at Austin. Today, you're going to need to be in the top 6% of your class. If you were applying to Yale in the 90s, you had an 18% chance of admission. Now it's under 5%. And 70% of USC applicants were admitted in the 90s, but in 2022, it's now under 12%. Now, maybe some of you also read a recent Wall Street Journal article about a young woman with an SAT score of 1550, a GPA of 3.95, phenomenal extracurriculars and leadership positions, who applied to top-tier schools and was not admitted to any of them. So there's no doubt that college today is super competitive. Now let's look at the complexity of the application process. So 20 years ago, you might have applied to one or two schools. The process was clear, simple, and straightforward. Now, because of all the moving parts of the application, students are applying to many more colleges, as many as 8 to 15 for my students. So there's a lot to stay on top of. Recently, a friend of mine was telling me about the ordeal of helping his son apply to college last fall. The numbers of different essays for each college, the completely different online applications to fill in, the SAT prep, coordinating with his school to send letters of rec, essays, recommendations for honors programs, coordinating summer internships, updating transcripts multiple times. All this was a ton of work and created months of tension with his son. So clearly this complexity really needs to be simplified. So after the competitiveness and the complexity of college admissions, the fact is that college has gotten incredibly expensive. If you look at this graph and brace yourself, this really illustrates how the cost of college tuition has exploded. The red line here on the bottom is the rate of inflation. And as you can see, the black line on top is the rate of increase in college tuition. Clearly, college tuition has massively outpaced inflation for decades now. Private colleges can cost up to $77,000 per year, while in-state tuition for public schools can cost up to $28,000 per year. But here is the good news. Merit scholarships can be worth tens of thousands and even hundreds of thousands of dollars. In fact, in 2022 alone, our clients averaged over $182,000 total in merit scholarships per student. And that was one of my goals from the onset. We know how expensive college has become. So by making our clients more attractive to colleges, we can radically increase the amount of merit scholarships. So how do we do this? Well, here are 3 quick success stories which illustrate how we guide students to gain a competitive edge, simplify the complexity, and maximize scholarships to reduce the cost of college. Let's start with Tony. When we began working early in 10th grade, Tony had high A's and an SAT score in the 1500s. He was stellar in math, so his teachers and family were naturally pushing him towards engineering. But after talking with Tony, he made it very clear that engineering was not what he wanted. However, this was the game changer. Through our process, we discovered he had a significant talent and passion for art as well as STEM. So we matched him to a local art mentor and a summer program to develop a portfolio. The portfolio we could then use to include with his applications. Exploring his interest in visual art and combining this with his talent in math led Tony to discover a passion for architecture. And this discovery made all the difference, because Tony was able now to really stand out. Why? Because he had a story to tell. And nothing will make you stand out from the crowd more than having your own story that demonstrates genuine passion and growth. So to summarize, we found Tony's passion, we simplified the application process, guiding him to a clear major and a career path he loved. architecture. We slashed costs by securing $100,000 scholarship to Tulane, and we gave him a competitive edge by curating his art portfolio and targeting his essays to align with architecture and his new vision for himself. So the result was that he was admitted to Rice, his first choice, where he has now finished a successful freshman year. And in this way, we solved the threefold problem of college admissions for Tony. But not all of us are straight A students. Like Tony, many of us get A's and B's. We might have a down year, get sick, be in a competitive high school, but we're still ambitious. This was Ellen. Ellen had a B average from a competitive high school, but was confident about thriving in a selective college. By working with her, we discovered that her GPA had significantly improved over the 3 years of high school through her hard work. When she got B's, it motivated her to get tutoring, find a college professor as a mentor, and she kept signing up for challenging classes, including organic chemistry. She also rose to a leadership position in yearbook and got a summer internship in a startup incubator to explore a major in business. But how was she going to pull all of these threads together to showcase her accomplishments? We worked with Ellen to tell her story in a compelling way. We helped her tell her story as a journey of growth and responsibility. We demonstrated through her essays and applications how she learned from setbacks and how these setbacks led to her development and improvement. In fact, they became assets. So maybe you or your child are like Ellen. You discovered a passion halfway through college, high school, college or high school. Maybe you began to excel by the end of junior year in high school, or maybe you're a straight A student who has a clear major in mind from the start. Either way, you may not recognize what's exceptional about you, but everybody has a powerful story to tell. We want to help you tell your story in a memorable way, your passions, your challenges, your growth. So to summarize, for Ellen, we simplified the application process by keeping her accountable and breaking down the long list of tasks into small steps. We kept costs down by helping Ellen submit standout applications, and she eventually received 12 scholarship offers ranging from $20,000 to $100,000. We gave Ellen a competitive edge by helping her pull all her academic and extracurricular experiences together into a compelling story in the essays and interviews. So, despite her GPA, she was admitted as a business major to Emory University, her first choice. So for Ellen, we solved the threefold problem of college admissions. Next, I will let Maria and her daughter Grace, who I worked with last year, tell you how the process went for them.
Hi everyone, I'm Grace Sorensen and I'm a long-term client of Miss Anjali. We began working my freshman year. Right away she got to know my family, my passions, and what I saw myself doing beyond just the years of college.
I have to agree. I'm Maria and I'm Grace's mom. And I would have to say the best thing about Anjali and working with her is that she's super organized. She uses a lot of technological tools that keep us organized with calendars and scheduling. What I loved is that she made Grace responsible for all of it. So selfishly, I didn't have to do all of that. And I actually love that she made her become very independent and very responsible for her learning and for her goals and reaching them. We love her dearly, and
Absolutely.
We are very grateful for her because she goes far beyond just academic learning and growth.
And I'm so proud to say and so thankful to be able to say that in these 4 years, thanks to her help with my applications, I was able to get a $20,000 scholarship to my top pick school, which is California Institute of the Arts, also known as CalArts. So thank you, Miss Anjali, for everything that you've done for me. We love you so much, and we can't wait to see what other lives you get to change. Thank you.
So Grace mentioned $20,000. That was $20,000 a year. So her scholarship over 4 years was $80,000. Now she had a mixed A and B GPA, no test scores, and had a remarkable singing talent that she needed to showcase. So what was our solution to the threefold problem of admissions for Grace? First, we simplified the process by keeping her organized and on task with spreadsheets and an application tracking system. Second, we kept costs down by optimizing all aspects of her application. And she was awarded scholarships ranging from $80,000 to $199,000. Third, as Grace was a singer, we gave her a competitive edge by curating her reel and helping her get admitted to the super competitive Grammy Summer Camp. In the end, she was accepted to her first choice, Cal Arts, and has been having a wonderful experience since. So the three students we discussed, Tony, Ellen, and Grace, were all success stories, but they were very different one from another. Yet for all our students, we are able to address the competitiveness, the complexity, and the cost of college. How do we do this? By using the personalized blueprint for success I've developed as a former Princeton interviewer, teacher, and parent. It is the blueprint I've used to guide hundreds of students through the admissions process. So again, to quickly summarize, Tony, now an architecture major at his first choice, Rice University, needed guidance on major and career. So we focused on giving him a competitive edge through finding him a mentor to take his art to the next level, curating his portfolio, connecting his art to his major in his essays. Now, Ellen, a business major at Emory University, needed help to tell her story of academic growth and extracurricular accomplishment. So we simplified the process by helping her focus on academic tutoring and SAT prep strategy and helped her write memorable essays. Grace, admitted to her first choice, the prestigious California Institute of the Arts, needed advice about how to take her singing to the next level. So we matched her to the prestigious Grammy camp and curated her music reel. This maximized scholarships and kept costs down. So before I share with you how I can help you solve the threefold problem of college admissions and tell your story, check out my track record and the return on investment when you work with us. So for 2022, as I mentioned before, the average total amount of scholarships per student was $182,000. Our students received over $2 million in scholarships. And the return on investment for our families was very high, and our fees were paid for many times over through these scholarships. In the same application cycle, students I worked with were admitted to some of the most selective colleges in the country, including Stanford and Dartmouth, University of Pennsylvania, Johns Hopkins, as well as excellent schools such as Ohio State, UC San Diego, and UT Austin. And best of all, these were also the right fit for each applicant. We made sure of that. So the return on investment here was optimized admissions. So if you want to gain a competitive edge, simplify the application process and keep costs down, like the hundreds of students I've helped ace college admissions, here are the three options. So option number one is for 8th to 10th grade students. It's called an early talent development package. And we have time here to identify your kids' talents, discover their passions, make sure they are really getting on track. And this option also maximizes admissions and scholarships results when they apply to college later on. Will help optimize their GPA, test scores, extracurriculars, and summer planning. You will also get a one-on-one financial advisor to help you maximize financial aid potential and create money-saving funding plan through our partner SmartTrack. Packages start at $26.87. Option number two is for the 11th graders only and does cover both 11th and 12th grades combined. It's our A-List college application package. In this package, you work directly with me. We will give you a competitive edge, simplify the complex application process, and keep costs low. I will help optimize your essays SAT prep and testing, applications, summer planning, as well as demonstrated interest scores for each college. This package, where you work directly with me, is $12,997. And option number 3 is for 11th and 12th graders. If you like the A-list package but cost is a concern, we have the college advisor package. It's the same as the A-list package, but instead of working with me, you work with an advisor I have handpicked and trained. We use the same exact methodology that we have been describing. So here again, we are helping you ace the process. And the cost is $59.97. So additionally, for this seminar today, in connection with NSHSS, we're offering a $200 discount on all our packages if you sign up for a 25-minute strategy session with me. So if you do sign up, students, please bring both parents to the session, and parents, please bring your spouse and your child. Sydney, our wonderful moderator, is going to drop the link in the chat now. Thank you, Sydney, for the sign up for this strategy session that will give you then the discount for all our packages. So now that I've given you the really kind of hard facts and challenges of college admission, I would like to finish the story about my son that I started at the beginning of the webinar. My son applied to college a few years ago, and at the end of this process, as I mentioned, he did in fact get into an Ivy League school. But that is not what he chose. Instead, after a lot of research, investigation, deep reflection, and a visit to campus, my son chose an amazing school, Carleton College in Minnesota, which you may not have heard of, but it turns out employers, grad schools, prestigious fellowship boards know very, very well. It was by far a better choice for my son, and it was better choice than the Ivies, because at Carleton my son got more attention, classes were more targeted, his professors advocated for him, he stood out. And as a result, after his freshman year of college at Carleton, he was awarded the Orion Mission internship at NASA and a second Orion mission internship at NASA the following summer. And today he's in grad school at an Ivy League college and tells me that in retrospect, although some disagreed with his college choice, it was absolutely the right one for him. And best of all for me as a mom, he's happy and thriving. So parents and students, I know you may be anxious right now, but I can assure you that there are many roads to success. Please remember that college is not a destination. The college application process can help you begin to discover your purpose, a great first step in designing a life of meaning and prosperity. And that's exactly what I wish for all of you. So we will now go to Q&A. Please don't be shy. Bring me your questions. Whatever I can't answer now, I will be happy to answer online or when we meet for the strategy session. Sydney, if you could put the sign up link again in the chat, that would be fantastic. And I am going to look at the Q&A right now, so just give me 1 second. I will be looking at it in just 1 second. Here we go, Q&A. All right. Great. So this is a great question. I see a lot of questions here about scholarships, right? How do we get a scholarship? How do you get a merit scholarship? What do we have to do? How do you begin applying? Or do we wait until financial aid is provided, et cetera, et cetera? So I would say two things. The best merit scholarships are offered by colleges, and they're part of the application process. Sometimes there's an extra essay or two from the colleges. That's merit scholarships that are not based on your income level. There's also financial aid that's based on your income level. But the thing to do is what I mentioned before, is tell your story in a compelling way that pulls together the threads of your experience and shows what kind of an asset you're going to be to the college community. What can you do for them? Find out about the colleges and show them that your experience, you can leverage that experience to truly benefit their community. That will make you attractive. The more attractive your application is, the more compelling your story, the better the scholarship results. Okay, and then let's see. If you're not good at taking standardized tests, you recommend not putting SAT scores on your applications. Yeah, this is a good one. There is no such thing. Yes, there's a perfect SAT score. But what you want to be looking for is not that. You want to be looking for how your SAT score relates to the mid-range of SAT scores or ACT scores from the colleges that you're interested in. And in order to submit those scores, I recommend that students have an ACT or an SAT at the top or above the mid-range. In the middle is still okay. At the bottom or below, not so great. So that's the rule of thumb I would use. And then applying for scholarships offered by the school before applying to the school. No, it's all done together or after. Scholarships are after. Okay, so Adriana wants to know how we can use your service, our services. No problem. Sign up for the strategy session. Go to the chat, and we can take it from there. I look forward to seeing you. So, yes, a small rural high school, strong grades, strong SAT scores, and wants to get into an Ivy or Ivy peer. Yes, biggest advice for something to highlight in my application. So the small rural is going to play in your favor, okay? It all depends. It's not that I don't want to answer your question. It's that these kinds of things are really strategy that's on a case-by-case basis. That's why we work with students, to get to know them, so then we can help them tell that story that's going to really stand out. Now, Alexa, I don't know if, what grade you're in, because that plays into it too. If you have more time, then you can do a mentored project, you can do research. If you don't have time and you're a 12th grader applying, then it's going to be all about the story and pulling together those threads like I showed you in the case study for Ellen. Now for the Ivies, it's, if you work with us, we give you that ticket to the lottery, but you have to see the process in the big picture, right? How is the college going to serve your long-term goals? Remember to ask that question and to really do your research about what it means to go to an Ivy or not to go to an Ivy. I'm very grateful for my Princeton education, don't get me wrong, but the Ivies do not have a monopoly on good education in this country. So there are many, many options as well. Okay, how much does it cost? Yeah, so I went over that, and if you could, Sydney, put the strategy session link in the chat, that would be great. That we can then meet, and I can go further into that. So yes, the leadership positions and extracurriculars have on college admissions. What impact do they have? Yes, so they have a big impact, right? Because if you imagine the number of high schools in this country, how many valedictorians, how many salutatorians are there in each high school, in the United States, not in each high school, but in the United States. So grades and scores are not going to be the distinguishing factors. They're necessary, but they're not sufficient. The extracurriculars, leadership positions are key ways to set yourself apart. Now, it should be leadership not just for the sake of saying you're president of this or vice president of that, but it should really be aligned with who you are, what you value, what your sense of purpose is. These are very, very important. I would say that the most important thing, once you've chosen your activities, let's say you're in 12th grade, and again, I don't know, Kiana, what grade you're in right now. But if you have time, then to plan those extracurriculars, plan those leadership positions based truly on who you are, what your identity is, what your values are, not just to tick off boxes. You can watch my TED Talk. It's about not just ticking off boxes, but really using this process of way to discover what you want, what you care about, and aligning your choices for summer, extracurriculars, et cetera, with what means the most to you. And if you're not sure, it's okay. You can use your high school experience to explore. There's time. It's not all about strategy. Let's remember the big picture, okay? So where can I find different types of scholarships? Again, there are at school, in the colleges are the best places. There are also third parties, but that's a different conversation, which I don't want to get into. If you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me offline. Okay, I have 2 juniors this year. Is it too late to start? Absolutely not. Absolutely not too late to start. This is a great time to start. So, Sarah, definitely, there's a lot that can be done in 11th and 12th grade to not only choices for next summer and resume building, et cetera, but also the process that I mentioned in detail. Okay, so then let's see. You're thinking about full ride versus more selective schools. Yeah, this is a good question. It really depends on the financial needs of your family. In some cases, and the fit for you as a student. In some cases, it makes more sense to try for a full ride or a scholarship rather than going for a high ranked school that's not going to offer that. So again, I'm giving you as much information as I can for you to be able to apply. But when I say I can't go any further, it's not that I don't want to. It's that normally I have to get to know a student before I'll say, yeah, given your financial goals, given the fact, let's say you want to go to grad school, you want to, stuff like that, it might be worth, getting a college list where a full ride, if that's open to you, would be better, right? So that's super important. Okay, just starting senior year, I haven't done any internships or summer programs. Do I still have a chance of getting into a good college? Yes, you have a chance of getting into a good college. It just depends what your definition of good is and how you tell your story. Because, I had a student last year who I helped who is now at New York University, a very selective school. And he hadn't done any extracurriculars. And the reason he hadn't done any extracurriculars is that he lives in a single parent family. And he spent his time taking care, instead of doing extracurriculars, shopping for food, cooking, and taking care of his little sister. And we had him write his Common App essay about that. Demonstrating responsibility in a family or in your community, or holding down a full-time job, a part-time job while you're going to high school. These are all really, really, really good things. There are all sorts of ways to tell your story. Never despair or think, oh my gosh, I haven't done this, I haven't done that. What, how am I gonna? There are generally ways, and there are generally ways to fit you to the colleges that would be excited to hear your story, whatever that may be. So, um, international, yes. We work with a lot of international students. International students can get scholarships. There are some that are earmarked for international students, so definitely meet up with us and I can tell you more. Yeah, so how much of a chance would someone have if they base their admission mostly on academics? Well, again, it depends on your college list. I don't think that it's a problem per se. Of course, if you're applying to a highly selective school and you have no extracurriculars and no family responsibilities and no job, but you've just focused on academics, as for a student in that situation, I might give them a different kind of college list. Still really good, but again, we want to pick those schools that would be excited to hear your story, your specific path. So the good news is there are 4,000 universities in the United States. If you get clear on what is truly important for you and what your story is about, you can find I am almost certain you can find the right fit, okay? Is volunteer work very important for college admissions? So, again, don't tick off boxes. Don't just say, oh, colleges want to see volunteer work and they want to see leadership positions, and then you just kind of randomly do that. No, if it means something to you. There are students who spend most of their time, as I say, family responsibilities, or their main focus is on research. Research, can be a way of doing community service in the sense that, if you're helping solve a big problem, you're participating in, I don't know, research, some biological research that can help people. That's another form of community service. So think outside the box. If you do not have the money up front, I guess for college, that's probably what you mean. There are many different paths. So definitely look into the different ways to fund. Now, just purely financial aid that's based on income, you should fill out the FAFSA and fill out a CSS profile if the colleges you are applying to are private. FAFSA will be mostly for public colleges. And then there are colleges that meet demonstrated needs. So if you need a full ride, there are colleges that will do that. The key here is be very, very precise in your research, okay? Know that it takes a while. It takes a while and it takes motivation to do this kind of research, but it's out there. The information is out there. And there are websites, if you want like third-party scholarships, like that means not given by the college, you can look on something like FastWeb, okay? That will give you some of those third-party scholarships. Okay. All right. Let's see. How do you build a student's college portfolio? Great. How we build a student's college portfolio is really based on the student. So for an art student, for example, very easy, right? You put together their best work and you present it in a certain way, you curate it. It has to be done intelligently. There's something called Portfolio Day that you guys can look into in your communities, any artists out there, and you can go and have feedback before you even apply to college. So look into that. It's in the fall. And then for other things, I like to share videos with colleges. If I have a student this year who's an engineer and he does 3D printing and he's done some interesting kind of work as a maker. So he has some videos on that and he's put them together and he's created a little personal website. That's a possibility. Now, you don't have to have that, Not all students who do very well in the college admissions process have portfolios. But for example, in the additional information section of the Common App, you can share a link to, for example, an academic paper. But make sure you give context and you say, I'd like to share this with you and explain why it's meaningful, not just kind of sharing for the sake of sharing, but actually that it has a meaning for you. Okay, is there a way to contact you or anyone else if we have questions? I think that Sydney has probably put information in the chat about that, or answering in the Q&A about how to get in touch with me. Yeah, there is a way. There's an email address, and I think she's put it in there. So good sources and websites for college scholarships. Again, focus on the colleges, not on these websites, because the websites, it's after you apply. Now, there's some exceptions. You can go on FastWeb, for example, or scholarships.com, or any of these websites. And you can find ones that have earlier deadlines, but it's in your best interest because the colleges are the ones that offer the big merit scholarships. So it's in your best interest to focus your energies on that, and then if there's time left over at the end, to go through the rest of that. And to look for those third-party scholarships organizations. There are organizations in the U.S. that do give scholarships, like businesses or nonprofits. A place like FastWeb or scholarships.com would be a good place to start, right? Okay, so what was the deciding factor between Yale and Princeton? Oh, that's a funny one. Probably not a great reason, but I visited Princeton in the spring, and the campus was so gorgeous. People were, having classes on the lawn and playing frisbee, and I just thought, this is where I want to go. I don't regret my decision, but that in the end, both really, really great schools, and at the time, I thought I was going to go to medical school, so I wanted to go to a place that had strong pre-med. They both had that, but anyway, that's how I made my decision. So a senior, right? Senior, and what can I do now that I'm a senior? I'm kind of lost. I hear you. The problem in the U.S. is that there's like 455 students per guidance counselor, and that's the average, and it's hard. What I would say in a situation like that is get very clear on what you want, on what you need financially, and then start doing a search. There's a search engine that's contact me offline, and I'll send you the link for doing college searches. You can look on, U.S. News and World Report. You can look on niche.com. But you can also get something called the FISC guide, FISKE. But if you really don't have the time, it's also okay to do a year of community college to slowly figure it out, or to even take a gap year, as long as you work or do internships or volunteer, whatever you need financially, but also to give you more clarity. But you as a senior, you're still in time. Just start with getting clear on what you need. I will send you that link. You can look on Niche and on U.S. News. And once you have your college list, then make a timeline for yourself. That can be extremely helpful. Just get a Google sheet and say, I got to get this stuff done by this deadline, and then work backwards. What do I have to do to get there? How can we start working on college essays? Should we seek out our English teachers for their help? So, the college, I would say college essays, it's really good to get somebody, an adult that you trust, to certainly to kind of give you feedback, but make sure that you feel that they are going to really help. So an English teacher might be a good choice. And what you want to do is make sure that those essays are truly aligned, especially the Common App personal statement, with you as a person, your character, your strengths. Don't repeat what's on your list of activities or resume in the personal statement. That's not going to help because they already have that. Ask yourself, what are they going to know about me apart from the essays? And then in the essays, try to present who you are and your strengths, challenges you've overcome. Common App has some great prompts. They even have a prompt that's write whatever you want. As long as that Common App essay shows what you can contribute to a college community. And it doesn't even have to be on a large scale. One of the best essays I've read from my students recently was an essay last year about a student who rejected his best friend because his best friend wasn't cool, only to then realize that this was a big mistake and that he was allowing himself to kind of get sucked into the whole like popular kid idea. So then he made amends to his friend. They got close again, and his essay was about kind of what happened, but also how he grew as a person. And it was really beautiful. It was very personal. It wasn't a huge dramatic thing. It doesn't have to be, right? But it does have to matter to you. I would say that's the most important thing. Let's see. Does dual enrollment decrease college costs? Yes, it can. It can, because it depends though. Because if it's dual enrollment with your local community college, if you're going to go to college, make sure that community college's credits are going to count toward that degree. Some of the most selective colleges, they may not accept credit from a local community college, but don't discount it. Do your research. Like with everything in this process, I would say the most important thing is do your research. Find out if the colleges you're interested in are going to recognize the credits from that community college. Okay, what if my son has a 4.0 GPA but is not testing in his SAT? Yeah. So, if a student is not a great test taker, again, go back to that case study that I described, where the student, was not a great test taker. She had a mixtures of A and B. That was Grace, the singer. And in that case, we just decided as a strategy to just drop the SAT entirely, right? So there was a survey that was done from colleges recently that showed that, roughly 50%. I mean, I'm simplifying, but roughly, and some were more, some were less, but roughly 50% of admitted students did not submit their scores. Okay, so however, the scores that were admitted, because the kids who are admitting are submitting their scores, are going to be kind of the highest test takers. So it becomes a little bit more competitive, the testing. So plus there's schools that traditionally were test optional even before COVID. So these are schools that understand how to assess a student holistically. Okay, should I target my extracurriculars to the major I want to apply in? That's interesting. I think that, again, what we want to do is tell the story. And sometimes what that means is, yes, indeed, choosing extracurriculars that somehow tell another part of that story. Now, if you're in computer science and you do computer science research, and you do teaching computer science to underserved communities, and you do, that can be a very powerful story to tell. But it's not always the case. There are students who I call the Renaissance kids. The Renaissance kids have many different interests, kind of like Tony in the story. He loved math, was really good at it, but he also loved art. And we think, oh my gosh, these are two completely different things. How am I going to put them together? Well, in a case like that, we have to be a little strategic and think, okay, so what kind of extracurriculars are going to help Tony tell his story? What kind of extracurriculars really are meaningful to him? Again, don't check off boxes. Don't try to outguess admissions. Do the things that are meaningful to you. Go deeply into those extracurriculars, and you'll see that the results will be good. Okay, so let's see. Common App is the best one out there. So you asked if it's good, it's the best one, which isn't saying that it's great, but it's certainly the best one. Yeah, so the strategy session with me for 25 minutes is free. So somebody asked if it costs. No, you're getting a discount. You're getting a $200 discount if you decide to sign up, but there's no obligation. Okay, so recommending colleges out of state. Yes. So I think the idea here is if a student wants to get a scholarship that will make their out-of-state college the same price as their in-state college, that's possible, right? But we have to choose those colleges very carefully. There's some colleges that have historically given very high scholarships to students, merit scholarships, and there are others less so. So we have to be strategic in which colleges, but it is possible. I have seen students be able to get that situation where they're paying about the same in-state and out-of-state because of scholarships. Okay, so the strategy session is free. The second question on that. Okay, let's see. If the question about a senior and how to and if you want assistance, we have that senior package, which is the college advisor package, which I mentioned. So if that's of interest, that was the third package that we mentioned. If that's of interest, please let us know. Okay. Let's see. There is no commitment. No, meeting with me is just to see if you would like to pursue it. You'll get your questions answered, and it's basically to see if which package would be right for you and if it would be a good fit. What colleges would you recommend for someone to go into culinary? Okay, this is an area that is interesting. I don't know much about it. When I don't know, I do the research, and I've helped students get into schools that had this specialized horseback riding program. When I started, I didn't know, but I found out. So I can't tell you because I don't know at this point, but certainly if we work together, I'd be able to find out for you. Okay, let's see. Early action, what is the best time? Early action, there's no best time. You could just apply, by the deadline. Most early action schools are November 1st. If a school is rolling admissions, the earlier you apply, the better. There is some advantage because it's kind of like first come, first serve, and they're allocating resources like that. Okay, let's see. Students with low grades still have a chance of getting a good scholarship. That's an interesting point. I had a student who came in when we started working together in 10th grade. He had a kind of high C average, and he applied to Tulane, early decision, and the reason he actually got in was because of his extracurriculars. I guided him on creating, he's a musician, helping him create these online concerts to raise money for first responders of COVID. So it depends, if you have some kind of, talent that you can build on, it is it could be possible. There's something called talent-based scholarships. So it kind of really depends. And talent is not just artistic, okay? It's all sorts of different, there are community leader type of talents, and there are entrepreneurial kind of talents, and there are debaters. I mean, there's all sorts of different kinds of talents. Yes. So the strategy session you could just come to, and you don't have to buy, you don't have to, there's no obligation to do anything. You can just show up with your questions if you're really considering working with us. How should we, this is interesting, how should we use our personal struggles in our essays, things like ADHD, addiction, right? So this is the thing. It's a delicate balance because we want to hook those admission readers into this essay, right? Remember, they are spending a total of 8 minutes reading the entire application. That was a survey that came out, and they filled it out, and they said, on average, we spend 8 minutes for everything: the transcripts, the letters of recommendation, the essays, etc. The essays, there was another article that came out recently that said, the essays, most of these readers are reading the first sentence or two and the last sentence or two. And if they get hooked in, then they'll read the rest of the essay. So my sense is sometimes those are stories that need to be told. I've had students write essays about those difficult topics. Sometimes we want to think a little bit strategically and think, let's be sure that the essay is not going to be too kind of heavy, where what we want to show is growth and development and what we learned from these things. So my rule of thumb is spend no more than 10% of the essay talking about the difficulties. Spend most of the essays showing how you turn things around. But it's not to say that you shouldn't do it. Again, case by case. There can't be a blanket solution. Okay. And if you don't know what direction you want to go in, or your child doesn't know, it's okay, right? There are all sorts of ways to explore. You can apply undecided. You can, if your child, or if you're in early high school, there are many ways to explore things like, and they don't have to cost any money. Volunteering for local nonprofits to find out what is really of interest. I give my students an interest and strengths assessment. Those can be very useful to find out what their aptitudes are, and what they need to do. That what work will be aligned with their aptitude. So it gives suggestions for careers. So there are many different things that you can do, and of course there are many assessments out there. I have some people use 21 personalities. That's a free one. I have one that I use that it is not the 21 personalities, but what I'm saying is there are many different ways to figure this out. So to stand out without knowing your career choice, that's fine, because you can still be exploring, aligning your choices with what really matters to you. So don't feel that that if you don't know what you're going to do in your career, there's nowhere to go from there. Okay, we have a little bit of time left. And please, we probably are not going to get to all the questions. Please feel free to reach out to me. The strategy sessions are really if you've decided you want to work with me but want to explore which package. If you just have a question, I'm very happy to support you. So just reach out to me offline. Okay. Yes. I'm just going to try to pick one that I haven't answered before. So the last C word, apart from competitiveness and cost, was complexity. It's just all the moving parts of the application that I described. So a student is launching 2 online businesses next year. Would that look good on applications? Again, this is really about making sure that those businesses align, because in the end, your daughter is going to need to tell her story. Why those businesses? Why specifically? A student, for example, who has, I had a student who was a composer, but he didn't know how to do jazz, and he met people who knew, who were very interested in moving from classical to jazz. He created software for them, ended up, with a kind of a business, and then ended up being able to even sell it to certain colleges to use in their classrooms. But that really aligned with who he was and what mattered to him, right? So that's the most important thing. I'll take one more. Let's see. Universities like MIT and Harvard, etc., do not offer merit scholarships. They offer scholarships based on need, financial need only. Okay, and let's see. Any difference between SAT and ACT? That's going to be my last question. So you don't have to take both. You can choose SAT or ACT. SAT rewards, it's fewer questions, but there's some trick questions. ACT has more questions, but they're more straightforward. So ACT kind of rewards speed, and SAT rewards kind of a little bit deeper thinking. But I do have an SAT versus ACT diagnostic that I give students, and that's one of the things that I help is to figure that out, because the only other way would be to take a full SAT and a full ACT, a practice, and then try to compare the two, which is possible. But I'm just saying this is also a shortcut that I can propose. So I've been so happy to be able to share this information with you. I hope it has been helpful, and I really look forward to seeing some of you at the strategy session and exploring how we might be able to support you in this process.